G'day, welcome to my channel, and this is my first review of wonderful uplifting films that I'd like to present to you during this difficult time during the pandemic. This is not the first film that I watched that gave me the idea to, give people a list of good films to watch that are applicable now. The first film that actually inspired me to do this channel was The 12th Man. But after having some discussions with my lovely friend, Jen, my French friend who's now Australian citizen, congratulations, she's in Melbourne, and I was telling her about The 12th Man. She was in lockdown and she saw it, and we had great discussions, and then she recommended The Way Back. So she recommended it, and it was quite similar, set in Second World War, in another country, what was happening in another country. We see lots of films that are happening in World War II about that are set in Germany or in America or in England, but we don't see what the other countries went through. We don't see what happened in Norway or here in Russia, Siberia, also the Himalayas. What was happening there. It was a lot of those things were under a bit of a cloak, hidden dark cloak. So thank you so much, Jen, for your recommendation. I wanted to do this as the first video. It's very appropriately titled, The Way Back. I think at the moment we all want to find our way back to our normal lives out of this enemy. It's a kind of a war on an invisible enemy. So this film is extremely uplifting because of what they go through and what they achieve. I'd like to bring up some of my notes. The Way Back, film by Peter Weir, inspired by real events that happened. The Way Back is a film by Peter Weir, a great Australian filmmaker, and this film is dedicated to those people. It's called The Way Back. Now, as you can see in the beginning, wonderful actors that are involved, top performance, especially by Ed Harris, Colin Farrell, and also Mark Strong and some of the other actors. The reason why this is such an uplifting film, because normally I don't like to recommend films that are about any war, especially now during this difficult time. I know that when I've been watching TV and you hear everything about people dying, especially in Victoria, it's crazy the amount of people dying in Victoria, Australia. I'm coming to you from New South Wales in the Hunter Valley, and things aren't as bad. But I know after watching the news and watching things that happen, and it's important to sometimes watch the news to know what the rules are, if you're allowed to go out. So you do need to keep abreast of that. But then when you turn on the TV and you see a film that's really depressing, or you see something that you just don't need it, it's such a difficult time. But if you sometimes we put the TV on to escape, to escape the stress. So here I'd like to recommend ahead that it's not they're going to be, some of the films may be sad, but they're going to be uplifting in some way, showing you that, we can get through this. And normally, again, I don't like presenting films about the war, because the last thing you want to see, a lot of people who suffered through the war or were in a prisoner of war camp, you just don't want to be reminded of that. But you see it a little bit here at the beginning, but it is in Siberia. These people end up, one American, one Czechoslovakian, and a Russian, and other people who are Polish or Hungarian. They end up in this prison, and they kind of end up coming together as a gang. And my favourites were, Ed Harris and Colin Farrell. I mean, I can't just talk about them enough. And the reason why they're, especially Colin Farrell, you don't even recognise Colin Farrell in this film. And what I mean by that is when you see him come in as the Russian character who's in the Gulag. So they're all in this camp, I think it's 105, that they are sent to Siberia for being enemies of the state. And they can't escape. They could escape, but because of the wilderness and because of the cold, it's actually very hard. Even if they do get to escape, basically they could die. What is so fascinating is they end up, the people that just got in, they hadn't been there very long, decided that they're just not going to survive in here. They're better off risking getting out of here and risking that than staying. Because what happened is Ed Harris's character ended up, doing something that pissed off one of the guards, but ultimately saved a lot of their lives. It's like, well, he's actually named, in the film, his name is Mr. Smith. He doesn't get personal with anyone in order to protect himself, so nobody even knows what his name is. He ends up defying, and because they end up getting, pissing off the guards, after they'd been in there for, a couple of months or whatever, they end up getting duty in the mines. Now, in the mines, people don't last very long, and they decided, okay, so now they've been sent to the mines, and that is hard labour. Hardly anyone survives that after 6 months or a year. And they said, right, we're gonna die, so we need to get this escape plan happening and moving, because we stay here, we're gonna die anyway. So why not risk dying while we're escaping, and we've got a chance, than staying here? Because now that they've been sent to the mine, that's it. They've got a plan and they're going to escape. One of the Russian criminals, which is played by Colin Farrell, you don't even recognise Colin Farrell hardly, and that's a sign, as I said, a sign of a great actor. He has a big debt, and even though he's Russian and the Russian criminals are in there as well, but because they're Russian, they get special preferences and they kind of spy on the other prisoners. However, this guy's racked up debts and he needs to get out of here. So in a way, he helps them. He's the only one that has a knife, and because he's Russian and he's friends with the guards, he gets to keep the knife. So he says, I need to get out of here. I've got debts, they're going to kill me. And luckily he joins them. Why this film is so uplifting, so you see they're in the prison of the war, but why it's so uplifting is they do escape. And all these people from all different nationalities come together as one, and they actually get out of there. What is so incredible about that? This is a true story, and what we're going through at the moment, these people have gone through far tougher trials, and they managed to leave while there's a storm. But then, of course, that's just the beginning, because then they've got to hike through the forest, minus 30 degrees. But they managed to form a plan, and they want to get to the lake. So all throughout the movie, you have different scenery, because they end up getting to the lake, and then when they get to the lake, they can fish and have food and then look after themselves. So you see them make every stage. They have this plan to get to here and a plan to get to there, and sometimes they're almost dying. They actually almost die, but every now and then they have this little bit of luck. They don't rely on the luck, because they know that there's no way they can just rely on good fortune, especially where they all come from. But when the luck comes, they make the most of it and they take it. But then they always still have a plan. And you find nothing is boring. There's always something happening. They almost starve to death, and then something happens and they get food. Then, they almost get caught. Why is this important film to watch. What these people go through and achieve, and you just always cheering for them. You're just watching nonstop to always cheer them on. You know, you want them to get to the lake. You want them to get to the border. When they finally get to the border, the end of the Soviet Union, it's interesting choice. You know, people who are not used to freedom, and that's quite interesting seeing, and you know, an insight into human psyche and the bounds that we put on ourselves. Now, before you say, oh, I'm giving too much away, I'm actually not. And in fact, more is actually talked about on the back of the DVD than what I've given here. What's really fascinating is these people, you know, some of the people who were in the beginning really bad kind of became really good, and some of the people who were really good, you see their characters change, and you know, they become a pain in the ass or they become useless. So it's actually really interesting to watch how you just can't judge a book by its cover. You can see, you know, somebody, for example, could be a criminal, but maybe they can't help which side of the tracks they grew up on. And then you find that, especially with Ed Harris's character, Mr. Smith, he's in a way the same as the Russian criminal, because he knows that one of the things that he says in the film is, it'll kill you, kindness will kill you. But he does that out of survival, and he's actually in fact the one that doesn't want to bring the girl on, and the Russian criminal also doesn't want to bring the girl on. But later on they change when they find out what the girl's gone through, and they sort of soften towards her. And the fact that they always, at least in this life and death situation, they look after each other. They don't, you know, people that hated each other, they realise that they have to all be together and survive together. They all stick together. They all at least have common decency and goodness towards each other, even though at one point some of them hated each other, because they know they have to get through this. And because they all make an effort to bond and to do the right thing and all do the right thing by each other, this kind of perpetuates this goodness, this kind of karma that comes back to them in those different little pockets of luck that they get that I mentioned before. And you can kind of see that, you know, in real life, if you do the right thing and you just keep on doing it, and life can be tough, sometimes some of that goodness comes back to you. It's just up to you if you see the signs and you're aware. They all have something to bring. So even the young girl who they didn't want to bring on. So you're never bored. There's always it's always visually exciting because of the landscape itself. And then also what's happening, and physical trials as well as mental trials. This film has everything. It was so underrated. I think it only got a nomination for makeup, which is just mind-blowing. And Jen and myself talked about how did this film get not noticed by people. It's so underrated. Seriously, it's up there with some of the top films that recently won Oscars. And it's also interesting to see, you know, what it would have been like in a gulag. You see that at the beginning, and that's why you understand that they have no problem about risking their life to escape, because they're probably going to die in there anyway. And they're all looking out for each other, you know, and that's just so important. We should do that these days. You've got people stirring up trouble because one wants to wear a mask and someone doesn't. Like, there's so many more important things, you know, do whatever the hell you want. But people here, they knew that they had to rely on each other. They couldn't make fun of each other, otherwise just simply just wouldn't survive. It makes what we're going through now look like kind of a joke, and also the fact that we've allowed this to happen. But it's also interesting when you see what happened in that part of the world where there were no tanks or soldiers and it was just deserted. In one way, it was kind of safe, but they were still fending for their lives, just to stay alive. But you see them make it. And some people, just out of sheer stubbornness, they want to, the fact that they escaped, they're going to go as far as they possibly can.
Get things quick.
There are good people out there, and it's important. This film shows how important it is as well. There's so many reasons that we should all be grateful that we're not all the same culture. We all don't speak the same language. It's good that there's different kinds of people all over the world, because we all think differently and we all bring some power or intelligence or strength to a situation that maybe somebody else might not have thought of, but they bring something else. So they all get through it because of each other, and that's what we should be doing now. So I don't want to give too much of the story. I gave some details because to explain certain situations, but trust me, it's nothing. What happens in this movie, I think it's like 2 hours. Let me just see, 132 minutes. So it's over 2 hours. Not a film you want to be talking with someone, one of your friends or something like that, or babbling or having people over. It's a film you want to be concentrating on. Maybe in the beginning when they're in the Gulag, you can kind of get away with maybe, if you're having dinner or something like that. Definitely sit down, relax and enjoy. You will go on a fantastic journey. I'll put down below some links where you can find this film all over the world at this stage. It's been out obviously for quite some time. So I have borrowed this from my local library, and I'm not aware if it's on, Netflix, but it's such an important moving film. It's even worth downloading and paying for to purchase at one of your local DVD or entertainment stores, and actually purchasing it. It really is quite an outstanding film. So, I give it 10 out of 10, and you won't regret watching this film. So thanks so much for your time, and look forward to giving you my thoughts on other uplifting films. Okay, thanks. Bye-bye.